This is an oil painting that I did 26 years ago on a cheap pre-stretched canvas that I probably bought at some craft store like a Michael's. I'm going to tell you everything that's gone wrong with this painting over the past 26 years. The canvas was stretched using staples, which over time are beginning to rust. I don't know if you can see that. This canvas was not sized. It was simply coated with a thin layer of acrylic gesso. And because of that, over time, the linseed oil in the oil paint that I used to do the painting itself has bled through and reached the canvas itself. You can see these brown stains here. What that means is this canvas is beginning to rot. Is there a better way to do this? You betcha. Okay, these are stretcher bars, 2 that are 20 inches and 2 that are 30 inches. You can buy these in just about any size. I think they go as low as 4 inches, 5 inches, all the way up to you name it. These are medium weight. You can see they're about an inch and a quarter thick. And what I really like about these, besides their beefiness and their rigidity, are these edges, these curved edges that bring the canvas up over the stretcher bar itself. This is the inside, the front, and this is the outside. And the canvas wraps around to the rear. The reason why I like these big raised edges is because when you stretch the canvas and start to paint, the canvas won't get low enough to touch this inner edge. If anybody of you has used those cheap pre-stretched canvases you can get at the craft stores, you'll know that sometimes this inner edge telegraphs onto the surface of the painting itself because there's so little room between this outer edge and this so little space between the outer edge and inner edge of those thin junky stretchers. Not these. This is the canvas I use. This is Cotton Duck number 12, medium texture. It comes in sheets that are, I don't know, approximately 3 yards by a little over 2 yards. You can also buy them in rolls. I prefer to use Cotton Duck as opposed to the more expensive linen because linen I've found is really difficult to stretch. This is relatively easy to stretch. The difference between linen and cotton, besides the material they're made out of, is linen is way more expensive, but it lasts a whole lot longer than cotton does over time. Usually by the time the canvas of a painting gets old enough, it needs to be replaced, and that process is called relining. With linen, you never have to worry about it for, who knows, a couple hundred years, but with cotton, maybe sooner. I still prefer this. This is the company where I buy it. again, number 12, unprimed, meaning there's nothing on it. It's just the canvas itself. There's no priming. There's no sizing on it yet. And medium texture. There are several ways to attach the canvas to the stretchers. I use these carpet tacks, that size. And in order to use the carpet tacks, you need to have a tack hammer, some type of hammer. This is actually made for this particular kind of tack. This is the old school way. This is the way it was done for hundreds and hundreds of years. Of course, they invented staples at some point, and what's very popular these days is to use a staple gun to staple the canvas to the stretcher bars. I don't particularly like it. I don't think it's as permanent as the tacks. This is obviously this is an electric staple gun. You can also buy mechanical staple guns. I still don't prefer to use this for stretching canvas, though. After the canvas is stretched on the stretcher bars, the surface of it, that's going to be the painting part, needs to be sized. I'll explain the sizing process when I'm actually doing it. The kind of sizing that I use is hide glue. This is granulated. This needs to be melted in a double boiler and applied warm. Another kind of hide glue is this product, Old Brown Glue. This is the same hide glue, only it's already liquid. It still needs to be warm before you can apply it, however. The purpose of sizing is twofold. First, it really tightens the canvas, as tight as a drum, as they say, which is always the goal. What it also does is it provides a barrier between the canvas and the primer and the paint. Because one thing you never want to have happen is the oil primer or the oil paint actually come in contact with the cotton or linen canvas, because the two of them don't get along, and over time the canvas will start to rot. Once the canvas is sized and the sizing is cool and dry, you need to apply the actual painting surface. What I use for that, for oil painting, is an oil painting primer. It's white, and usually 2 coats of this will do the job. Usually the second coat I will tint to a gray or a very light brown. I've never liked starting a painting on a bright white canvas. I much prefer to start with a toned canvas. Again, oil paint primer for oil painting. If I was doing an acrylic painting, you could then skip the sizing step and just use this, which is acrylic gesso. It's essentially a cheap white acrylic paint that's just a little bit more spreadable than a tube of white paint. 2 coats of this on a stretched canvas will get the job done for an acrylic painting. What applying this will also do is it will help to make the canvas tighter. Not as tight as using the sizing for the oil paintings, but it'll still help tighten it up for you. This is the stuff that those cheap pre-stretched canvases use. Those kinds that you get in the craft stores. Okay, just testing the corners. Make sure we've got a true rectangle. There's a little bump like that's all you need. There we go. I've rough cut the canvas so that I've got enough edge material to make it easy to stretch. So this is a 30 by 20 stretcher. So I've got 38 wide by 28 deep, giving me 4 inches on each side. Now there's too much material in the corners, so what I need to do is trim off the edge, but I want to have enough so that it'll wrap around. So I'm going to give myself that much. And this is what I'm going to be trimming off. And the same for the other 3 sides. Just to playing it safe. I'm going to show where the stretcher frame has to go back onto the canvas in case it moves. I always stretch starting in the middle of each of the sides and working towards the corners. You don't have to really stretch it hard. That's plenty. Enough so that just the pressure of my hand on it will keep it tight. Okay, now the rest of this is just simply going around, pulling this way as well as pulling that way. You're always pulling towards the corners. So it's basically like a 45-degree angle pull that you're making. You can see where it does that. And then just completely around. Going this way now, going towards this corner. Etc. I'm trying to gauge how close I'm getting. I don't want to come too far with this side if I'm not keeping up with this side. So It's just eyeballing it. Pulling up, I'm pulling over, pressing down with my hand, like that. You finally reach a point where it's time to just go corner by corner. Here's where you get to choose how you want the fold. You want the fold on the bottom, this side, or that side. You push in, and down, like so, and you pull this over until you get, I don't know if you can see that, until you get something that looks like that. Pull that up. Like that. Okay, all four corners done, folded. Just tight enough. You can still see some places where the original folds were. Some people would have ironed this before they started the step, but I know from experience that as soon as I do the sizing, everything will become nice and absolutely flat and tight. Like I said before, tight as a drum. That's the next step. Okay, to prepare the hide glue, you've got to heat it in a double boiler until it's liquid. At first, you need to add some water. More than that. You have to add water so that it completely covers it. This is distilled water. Like that. Now we just have to wait for the granules to absorb the water and get sort of gelatinous looking. Next step is to put this in the double boiler. And wait for it to liquefy. This could take a couple of minutes. So, I ended up using some very hot water and one of these, and I gently scrubbed the surface until I reliquefied the glue and I was able to smooth it out flat. The second coat, just to be sure that I've gotten full coverage, I guarantee, will be hot and thin. Now remember I said tight as a drum? Just like that. I thinned the oil painting primer down with mineral spirits to almost a cream consistency. Maybe half and half. The first layer is going to be thin like this, not straight out of the can. Just have to make sure that it's completely mixed and not lumpy. Just like with the sizing, starting from the center and working out towards the corners. Now, unlike the sizing, this is essentially thinned down oil paint. So I've got as long a working time as I want. Now the sizing goes over the edge and down the sides a little, but the primer won't. The primer will stop at the edge. Now this has to dry overnight. Sometime tomorrow we'll put a second coat down. Okay, it's the next day and the first coat is sort of tacky dry. I'm going to leave it for the rest of the morning and check it again in the afternoon. The second coat will also be white, but the third coat, probably the top coat, will be tinted. And I think I'm going to go with a light gray for the tint color. We'll see. Okay, to tint the final layer, the top layer of the canvas, I am going to use a Gamblin product, Payne's Gray, which is really a mixture of, in this case, ivory black and ultramarine blue. It gives a very cool bluish gray when it's mixed with white. And that's what I'm going to do here. What I found over the last couple of days after I mixed the primer, that it's starting to get a little thick. So I'm also going to add a little bit of Gamsol, which is a mineral spirit, and that's used for thinning oil paints and cleaning brushes too. So I'm going to start with that much. I don't want to make it too dark. I just want to make it dark enough so that blinding white of that canvas disappears. I think having a toned background, either a gray or a brown or a blue, makes it easier to determine the best color of the paint that's being applied to it than with white, which I think the white just overpowers any color paint you might put down on the surface. There, I don't know if you can see, but that's probably going to be perfect. I don't need to add any more of this. Save this for the painting itself. I'm just going to add a tiny little bit of Gamsol. This is so much better than using turpentine to clean your brushes or to thin your paints. Absolutely odorless. Works just as well. Perfect. And we're done. The canvas is mounted on my easel. And now I just have to figure out what I'm going to paint on it. Anyway, this is Keith Minion Studio in Stanton, Virginia. Thank you for watching.